Greg Vierman, Principal and Executive Creative Director with Astronaut Studio, here at the Charge Energy Branding Conference, Houston, Texas, joined by a good friend of mine.
I am Jeffrey Abraham, the Principal Creative Director at Self Brand Studio in Portland, Oregon. And yes, we're at Charge Energy Branding Conference, and we have the good fortune to sit with a good old friend of ours from last year, Casey Boyce. Yep. Casey, tell us about Escalent. Tell us about what you do for Escalent. Tell us about your podcasting. Pack it all in. Tell us everything.
All right, let me see what I can do here. So thank you first for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys here. And great to see you again at Charge. So Escalent's a human behavior and market analytics firm, which is a really fancy way of saying we just help customers under our clients understand their customers, right? So we do a lot of market research to understand where people are at in various aspects of their lives. So I work a lot in electric vehicles and utility customer experience, do a lot in connected vehicles as well. So we'll do things like focus groups, we'll do things like surveys, we'll do some secondary research, see what's out there on the market, again, helping our clients sort of understand where people are at in their journey on various things.
Okay, time out.
All right.
Connected vehicles?
Connected vehicles.
We're talking about autonomous here?
No, not necessarily. So we do a little bit in autonomy, but connected vehicles are more like, think about your ability to use a mobile app to precondition your car, sure. That kind of thing. But, there are automakers that are trying to do more with that. So things like concierge services, right? So you're driving home and you decide, hey, we're going to have burrito night tonight. That's the way to go. Can you have that stuff ready for me at the grocery store I'm driving by, and having a service that takes care of that while you're in the vehicle?
Oh my gosh, I love it.
So are your clients mostly direct with the car manufacturers, or are they with ad agencies who are representing the car manufacturers?
Most of our clients are auto manufacturers and utilities. We do a little bit of work with ad agencies because what we discover about consumers often will feed into the creative process, right? But we don't handle any of that. We'll do some ad testing and things like that and judge you guys. But
we love to be judged.
Yeah.
I love to be judged.
That's what I think is so fascinating about what Casey and Escalent do, Jeffrey, is that here we are, we tend to be on the execution side. We make, the media. But there's a little bit of a yin-yang thing that you provide, sort of some balance in terms of consumer insight. What have you learned over the years? And in particular, I'm curious about the work you've done in EVs. We're always talking about EVs, but you've done some very specific research that I think is worth mentioning.
Yeah, so we've got a study called EV Forward that looks at the next generation of EV buyers. So if you look at people who own an EV today and people who are likely to buy an EV for their next car, they look very different. So if you're trying to think about the future, you don't want to be talking to existing EV owners. I own one. I'm a weirdo, right? Don't talk to me about a Polestar, yes.
We're going to come back to the Polestar discussion, but yeah.
So we're looking at this next generation of EV buyers, and, as you might expect, people have different motivations for wanting to buy an EV. Some people are motivated by the environment, some are motivated by saving money, some because it just looks cool, right? It's the thing to have. And so we look at how to appeal to different buyer groups. But one of the more interesting things, and we were talking about this morning at breakfast that we did recently, is looking at how do we specifically message to people who are interested in buying EVs? And the challenge is that we haven't had to explain to people how gas cars work for a century.
Right.
Right? You just know.
Right.
And so as a result, the marketing for gas cars is, features and benefits. You're trying to tie into the emotion. It's a rugged off-road, whatever it may be. Yep. What we found is that with EVs, we actually have to explain how it works because people have really valid questions about it. How long is the battery going to last? How far can this thing take me? Where do I recharge it? How do I set up charging at home? And so we actually have to back up a moment and say, okay, let's talk about electric vehicles as they're different from gas. People think about gas, and so it's in relation to that gas experience.
Right.
And then you can get into why this is the cool electric vehicle to get. So too many automakers are going straight to that features, benefits, that emotional time. People are like, wait, hold on, back up. I've got questions about electric.
the entire platform,
Yeah.
independent of model, make model,
That's right.
that whole thing.
Yep.
Well, it's really interesting because that's going to segue into my defense for what we were talking about this morning about Polestar. Last year, Casey and I got to talking. Casey told me that he got a Polestar, and I was beyond jealous because to me, that was like the pinnacle of EVs that I needed to buy for myself. I'm a Volvo guy. They were owned by Volvo. But more importantly, I'm going to sound real bougie when I say this, but I read the New Yorker, and the New Yorker advertises a certain set of advertisements to a certain set of upscale-ish people.
The Jeffrey Abrahams of
The Jeffrey Abrahams of the world. The people who can't keep their jackets unruffled. But anyway, my point is the ads for Polestar in the New Yorker magazine made this thing, it got my heart fluttering. It did all the things that it needed to do to emotionally convince me that this was my car before I ever talked to you about this. And, you know, it doesn't talk about how to charge an EV or that it's an EV. It doesn't even mention the fact that it's an EV. Okay. Casey was disappointed in me because in our last podcast, I talked about how I got into a Polestar when a Lyft picked me up in one, and I was disappointed. It didn't live up to my expectations. So my expectations never had anything to do with range, cost, repairs, none of that. My expectations had to do with the fact that they were this fancy car in New Yorker magazine on a 2-page spread in the middle of the ocean. And
So they were selling you something that they didn't deliver on.
that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is brand. I mean, that's, you know, and that brings us right back to the whole premise of our reunion, that we're here at a branding conference. And clearly the work that you do, you know, with Escalent is sort of an essential behind the scenes thing to feed hopefully effective communications, both, you know, when it comes to, you know, the work that Jeffrey and I do, but also when it comes to the, you know, product design, right?
Yeah.
And I sort of wonder about, you know, what is it about this conference that that kind of, you know, lights you up and compels you to return, you know, these many years?
Yeah. I am and have been for a long time a strong believer that the energy industry needs to get serious about brand. So when we look at the energy transition that we're going through right now, it's going to be a lot cheaper and a lot faster if people are engaged with energy across the board, right? Like that's with their utility, that's with their vehicle, that's all of that stuff, right? And historically, that just has not been the case. You know, the utility has been something that, you know, you get the bill once a month, you write the check, or maybe it's on auto pay, you don't even think about it. You know, you go to the nearest gas station. Some people have a brand affinity for gas, but not most people. And
I love my Sunoco. Anyway,
there you go. I mean, I was a Shell guy when I drove gas cars, so there you go. But, you know, if we think about what needs to happen, we need people to look to their energy provider for solutions, whether it's EVs, whether it's, you know, home batteries, solar, whatever the case may be. And if they're not looking there, it's going to go a whole lot slower. Like if I just say, look, I'm tired of getting this high bill from my utility, I'm going to throw solar on my roof, and I'm tired of these outages, I'm going to throw a battery in my garage. I take care of my problem, but those assets can serve more people if they're interacting with the utility and the grid. And we need people to trust their utility to do that. We need people to understand the benefit to them personally of doing those things. And all of that's brand.
Right. We've talked about engagement quite a bit this afternoon. And, you know, I wonder, okay, so brand is nothing if it doesn't produce some degree. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole point is, you know, you want to make it easy to interact. And I wonder what your assessment is of this industry and its progress in that direction. Are we getting better, or are we still missing some things?
It's a great question. I will say and I'll speak specifically of the utilities industry here. Utilities industry has made far more progress than I thought they would when I started working with them 10 plus years ago. They still have a long way to go. So they're not there yet. There's still a lot of engineering speak. There's still a lot of, you should do this because this is good for me as the utility, rather than I care about you as a customer and this is how whatever it is I'm doing is going to benefit you as a customer. There's still a lot of monolithic thinking, so we're all the same, even though we live in 3 very different parts of the country and are 3 very different people, right?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a great point. Well, I'm impressed to hear you say that because, for most of us, we don't think of utilities as being innovative. But here in Texas, the marketplace is a little bit different as we've learned and provides some unique opportunities to drive engagement.
That's value of competition.
There you go. The value of competition is.
Well, and speaking of competition, and, I don't want to go on too long, but I want to know, we spoke on our most recent show about how challengers or the underdogs can compete, the mom and pops. How do they compete with the big dogs? It's like, these big energy companies, the Sunocos of the world, the Shells of the world, they can afford to make $1 billion mistake and still be okay. But can Escalent make $1 billion? I understand that you're not an energy company, but any of these energy companies that we're talking to, can they afford to make $1 billion mistake? Probably not. And so how do you compete in that world? How do you challenge the incumbents?
Yeah. So I mean, if you are the underdog, right, the mom and pop, it's about really deeply understanding your customer. And frankly, I think that's true even if you are the behemoth, right? Like your route to continuing to be the behemoth is loving customers and being empathetic to who they are and what their challenge is. And if you don't do that as a brand, ultimately you're going to lose out. But I think that advice, again, that carries over the small people that can really focus one-on-one to the big people that want to stay on top. So,
Great point. Great point.
The problem is the big people on top have a ton of money to spend with Escalent versus the mom and pops who don't.
But they also don't necessarily see the value in it, right? There's some risk that comes with being large or being an incumbent utility of like, we've got this kind of thing. And I think part of it is this humility to say, look, I haven't known you guys for that long, but, I've known you for a while. There's still more I can learn about, Greg and Jeffrey, and that's true about brands and their customers as well. So
great point.
That's a great point.
That's a wonderful point. Yeah, because that's exactly, we're talking about relationships and engagement, and that's true for humans. That's true for companies. We talk about business to business, business to consumer. Many of us in our industry don't really, cop to that distinction that, like, oh, they're different. No. Still have a relationship, and the CEO of a company still, laughs at the same Super Bowl ads that the rest of us do. So those are important things to remember. Well, let me just maybe throw at least one more idea, unless Jeffrey has something else to share. And that is, well, I'd like your evaluation of the conference. Tell us about your impression of what you'd like other people to know about the Charge Energy Branding Conference, because it is so unique. And as you pointed out, like, it's brought the 3 of us together, along with many kindred spirits, let's just say, and it's kept you coming back. What do you think people should know? What's the most important thing for them to know about, what you get out of an event like this?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just people coming together that believe in the power of brand as it relates to energy, and people from all over the ecosystem, right? So, we're kind of traditionally a market research company. You've got vendors here that serve energy brands. You've got you guys that are on the creative side. You've got the energy brands themselves. And I love having conversations with people here because we're all thinking in the same way, but we've all got our own unique perspective. So I feel like we come out stronger as an industry after this event, because of those conversations. And, I think that this is a example of where, rising tide lifts all boats. Brand is not something that's kind of natural in the energy space, at least in most parts of it. So, our ability to get more people excited about it and thinking about it and being creative and doing stuff is phenomenal.
I appreciate that.
How's that for a plug, Charge Energy Branding Conference? You come to the conference and we all align and go about our business afterwards in a better way because we're all here together. Casey, thank you so much for just jumping at the opportunity to come over and talk to us. I know we didn't have anything scheduled, but this has been great, as always. I'm sure we'll have a drink tonight and discuss more, but thank you.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, guys.
All right. And thank you for joining Jeffrey, Casey, and I, Charge Energy branding conference.